It is a real honor to be here, to join you in celebrating Galapagos Day. I think most British people would agree that as children, it is one of our collective dreams to go and visit the Galapagos Islands. It's something we're all taught about, that 1835 date etched into all of our brains. The Galapagos Islands, a sort of case study in the magic of nature. You know, we all know about Darwin's finches, we all know about these extraordinary tortoises. I actually adopted a tortoise. She's called Jane. I was going to try and find you a picture, but I realized there's no point holding it up. You won't see it. You just have to imagine her. Beautiful Jane, who I get the occasional update about from friends in the Galapagos. But having, during COVID, been given a virtual tour. I was given one of those headsets, and I was able to do a bit of diving virtually, able to go up the hills and meet some of the tortoises, and it was a magical thing, and I thought probably that's where it would end. But nothing prepares you for actually being in the Galapagos Islands. It is, I think, genuinely a spiritual experience. You see things you can't imagine until you've seen them with your own eyes. Just an incredible abundance, amazing diversity, and protected by just a wonderful people, the Galapaguenas, is that correct? Galapaguenas, and Ecuadorians generally. The Galapagos Islands are a source of incredible national pride, and that is reflected in how well those islands are looked after. So I will forever treasure the memories I have of being in the Galapagos just a year or so ago, and I would love to go back and check in on Jane, check she's not misbehaving, young teenager tortoise. But despite that beauty, and walking along some of the beaches in the Galapagos, it's just nothing but nature. No litter, no rubbish, nothing. The odd, slightly menacing marine iguana, they exist only there, they don't live anywhere else. But appearances can be deceptive, and I went with members of the trust, volunteers, and I was given a little round sieve, and we put the sand through the sieve. And in just a square foot of beach, I was able to fill a jam jar by about 2 centimeters of tiny granules of plastic. And it's incredibly depressing to think even there, this remote, perfectly protected natural haven, even there, the ravages that we're inflicting on the world's ocean have left their mark. The Galapagos are incredibly lucky to have this trust. The trust goes way beyond the call of duty. It calls on volunteers of all ages, all backgrounds, and really they pour love into the work that they do. But the Galapagos, in a sense, are a microcosm now of what is happening globally to the ocean, where we heard about the 6th mass extinction. Well, that obviously impacts the ocean as well. The extinction is affecting marine life just as much as it's affecting the land. And if you consider how important the ocean is to our very survival, that is just madness what we're doing. The overfishing, the plastic pollution, the contamination, the coastal degradation, the grubbing out of extraordinary habitats, the corals, the mangroves, the seagrass, the damage we are doing is, I think, the very definition of insanity. We cannot survive without the ocean. 1 in every 2 breaths we take is nourished. The oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. If you're a coastal community in an area which is experiencing ever-increasing and ever more intense storms, as many parts of the world are, it is the coastal ecosystem that protects you. I came back from Colombia shortly before going to Ecuador, and they are embarking on a huge mangrove restoration program. They're not doing it for biodiversity reasons. They're not even doing it to absorb carbon, although it'll do both of those things. They're doing it because when they were hit by record storms, the likes of which they had never experienced before in Colombia, they realized that those communities where the mangroves had been protected or where the coral reefs were still intact were largely buffeted, largely protected from the storms. So they've embarked on this program now as a means of defending communities. And of course, food. You know, we all eat fish, but there are hundreds of millions of people for whom fishing is their main source of livelihood. There are probably about 1 billion people for whom fish is the main source of protein. And you can see what happens when you denude the ocean of life. In fact, you remember that it was Captain Phillip, was that the name of the film, the Tom Hanks film, the pirate film? There's one moment in there where the Somali pirates are talking to their captive, and they are explaining that there was I forget the language they used, but there was a marked and measurable and undeniable spike in piracy, which coincided exactly with the moment those waters were declared a dead zone as a consequence of pillage, mostly through illegal fishing. And we are seeing the same beginning in other parts of the world. The fishermen of Senegal are making exactly the same point today. There's foreign vessels come in and exhaust their ocean, 50,000 families, all depending on fishing. They're going to have to do something to survive. They've got the boats, they understand the waters, but they've got no fish left to catch. So we are beginning, I think, to recognize the importance of the ocean. I think COP26 was a turning point, actually. It was the first climate COP where ocean really became a central, a focal point, the recognition of the ocean as a solution to climate change, but also as part of the adaptation that communities are going to need to invest in order to protect themselves against the impact of inevitable climate change. And I think it did mark a turning point. But what I think was most exciting about moving oceans into the heart of our climate discussion was that it gave us an opportunity to see some really staggering examples of ambition and leadership. And right at the forefront of that, I think, was Ecuador. We had a moment where I think the whole of COP was captivated by an announcement made by the president of Ecuador, the president of Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, out of nowhere, seemingly, a commitment to protect an area 500,000 square kilometers, joining those 4 countries. It's exactly the kind of ambition that I think the world needs to see more of. And it was, for a day, it was all really people were talking about at COP. And it inspired, and I could see, as one of the people who was trying to raise ambition among other countries, I could see other countries stepping up, wanting to match that level of ambition and coming up with their own pledges. So I will forever be indebted to those 4 countries. But President Lasso from Ecuador really stepped up for COP, and he enabled us, I think, to deliver a more successful COP than we would otherwise have been able to do. And a source of pride for me, as someone who, I'm existing in a government which is just about hanging in there, and who knows what will happen next week. But whatever happens, because of some people I'm looking at here, Alona and Bryony, who created the Blue Planet Fund, which is a wonderful new project, a funding program that the UK runs, £500 million. We were able to use that fund, and I think it's the very first investment we made. It was not a huge investment, but it was enough to kickstart that CMAR program, that 500,000 square kilometers. We were the first investors, and on the back of our little investment, gave confidence to donors all around the world, and the project was flooded with the resources that it needed, and today this is one of the most exciting ocean protection programs that I'm aware of. So thank you to Brian and thank you to Alona, because what you're doing in the name of the UK government is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So, I shouldn't be really heaping the praise on the UK here. I'm really here to praise Ecuador for the wonderful things they've done. But I do want to acknowledge that there are some phenomenal things being done despite the chaos. That the Galapagos Conservation Trust is a wonderful organization. They looked after me when I was on the islands. They gave me an experience that I will never forget. They do wonderful work. I'm assuming everyone here is already a supporter of the trust, but if you're not a supporter of the trust, please sign up, become a member, support them, because they're protecting one of the world's great jewels. There's almost nothing like the Galapagos Islands around the world. Nature is a magical thing, as we know, but there's nowhere that I'm aware of where you cannot leave the Galapagos Islands without having a sense of reverence for nature, that if you didn't have when you arrived, you are 100% guaranteed to have when you leave. And part of that is down to the amazing work that this trust does. So thank you so much to you for all your work. Thank you to you for supporting the trust. Long may this trust continue. And thank you to Ecuador. I don't know where Sebastian is, the ambassador. Ambassador, my job is to introduce you. You don't need much of an introduction. But as a representative of this great country, I look forward to hearing what you have to say.